Hey everyone, welcome to Simplilearn's YouTube channel. In this session, we will learn the fundamentals of C# programming language. But before we begin, let me tell you guys that we have daily updates on multiple technologies. So if you're a tech geek in a continuous hunt for latest technological trends, then consider getting subscribed to our YouTube channel and don't forget to hit that bell icon to never miss an update from Simplilearn. Now, let's get started with the agenda for today's session. First, we will learn the history of C# programming language. Later, we will go through a brief introduction of C#. Next, we will understand the variables, data types, and operators in C# programming language. Followed by that, we will try to understand the structure of a C# programming language. Once we are done with the fundamentals, we will try to execute the first C# programming language. Later, we will try to install the best IDE for C#, that is the Visual Studio, in the Windows operating system and try to run a program in it. Followed by that, we will understand the conditional statements in C#. Next, we will look into the arrays, strings in C#. Then we will understand the functions in C#. Later, we will get into the collections in C# programming language. Followed by that, we have ENUM in C#. Next, we will understand the object-oriented programming paradigms of C#. Then we will learn the access modifiers used in C#. Next, we have the file operations, exception handling, and last but not the least, we will wind up the session by learning the new features in C#. I hope I made myself clear with the agenda. Now let's get started with the first point in our agenda for today's session. So the first topic, history of C#. C# is a Microsoft provided object-oriented programming language that runs on a framework for internet, and Anders Eilsberg was the first person to create it. After learning how the C# programming language was created, we will look at the introduction of C# programming language, where it is used and why we should use it. So, C# is a Microsoft provided object-oriented language that runs on the .NET framework. C# has its roots in the C family and is related to other popular programming languages like Java and C++. In the year 2002, the first version was released. C# version 8 is the most recent version, which was released in September of the year 2019. C# programming language is used in various fields including mobile applications, desktop applications, web services, websites, games, database applications, and virtual reality. Now, we will look at why we should use C# programming language. C# is one of the most widely used programming languages in the world. It is simple to learn and use, and it has a lot of community support. C# is an object-oriented programming language that gives programs a clean structure and reuses code, lowering development costs. Because C# is like C, C++, and Java, it is simple for the programmers to switch to C# or vice versa. Moving ahead with the fundamentals of C#, we will now look into the data types in C#. Data types can be classified based on their memory location. The first data type in C# programming language is value types. Followed by that, we have the reference data types, and finally, we have the pointer data types. We will go through all these three types in detail. First, we will look at the value data types in C#. A data type is a value type if it can be stored as values in its own memory space. That means this type of data types directly store their data or value in a variable. For example, you can see on my screen we have integer variable I is storing the value 200. So these type of data types are called as value data types. So a few examples of value data types are boolean, byte, character, decimal, double, enum, float, integer, long, short, and structure. Next, we will see the reference data types in C#. So a reference data type, unlike a value type, does not store its value directly. Instead, it saves the address where the value is kept. In other words, a reference type contains a pointer to another memory location where the data is stored. An example of reference data type is string anime is equal to Simplilearn, where the string is reference data type. The following data types are a few examples for reference types, that is, strings, arrays, class, and delegate. Last, we have the pointer data type in C# programming language. A simplest data type is the pointer data type. Its functionality is identical to that of a pointer in C programming language. and it is intended to store the address of another pointer. An example of pointer which is shown on my screen is int pointer p. We will look at the variables in C# after we understood the data types in C#. Variables are storage containers of data values. In C#, there are various types of variables defined with different keywords such as first, the integer data type or integers that store values such as 1, 2, 3 or -1, 2, 3. Next data type is the double, which stores floating point numbers with decimal places such as 19.99 or -19.99. Followed by that, we have the character data type, which stores single characters such as A or B. To surround character values, single quotes are used. The next data type is the string data type. The string data type stores string values such as hello world. Double quotes are used to surround the string values. Finally, there is Boolean type data type, which stores values such as true or false. Now, we will look at how to declare variables in C# programming language. To make variable, you must first specify its type and assign its value. The syntax for declaring variables is as follows. We have the data type, which is data types. Here, in this case, we are using integer. Then we have a variable name. In my case, we are having a variable with name, that is name1, and the value we are storing inside is x, y, z. So this is how exactly you try to declare variables in C# programming language. So followed by the variables in C# programming language, we will learn about the operators in C# programming language. Operators are used to manipulate variables and values. There are 4 types of operators in C# programming language. The first one is the arithmetic operators. Next we have the assignment operators. Followed by that we have the comparison operators. And lastly we have the logical operators. We will go through each one of these in detail, beginning with the arithmetic operators. First we have the additional arithmetic operator, which adds values together. Then there is subtraction operator, takes one value and subtracts it from another. Following that we have the multiplication operator, which multiplies 2 values. Following that we have the division operator, which divides one value with another. Next we have the modulus operator, which returns a reminder of the division. Following that we have the increment and decrement operators, where increment increases the value by 1 and decrement decreases a value by 1. Next we have the assignment operators in the list. Variables are assigned with values using the assignment operators. Following are some of the assignment operators to use in C#. First we have equal to operator, then we have not equal to operator, later we have greater than, next we have less than, following to the assignment operators, we have greater than or equal to, finally we have less than or equal to operators. Last but not the least, we have logical operators, which is used to explain operators in C# programming language. To determine logic between variables or values, logical operators are being used. The first logical operator in C# programming language is AND operator. AND operator provides a result as true if only both the values are true. If one of them is false, then it returns false. Next, after AND operator, we have OR operator. It returns a true value if either of the values is true. If both the values are false, then the result will be false. Finally, we have NOT logical operator. NOT basically is the negation of whatever the number you provide to it. If you provide a true value, it gives you a false value. And if you provide a false value, it returns a true value. Now that we know the fundamentals in C# programming language, that is the data types, variables and operators, we will now look into the basic structure of a C# programming language. So the basic structure of a C# programming language looks something like this. So basic structure of a C# programming language includes a class. So in here we have a class named by Simplilearn. You can also have a class name based on your decision. Next we have the main function followed by the class. Later we have the void and static data types and a line string argument and finally a print message. Now that we have understood the basic structure of a C# programming language, let us see the first C# programming language. So on my screen you can see a basic C# programming language that is used to print a message hello. First we'll use the system namespace in C# and we'll do so because we have namespaces that we use to organize classes and the system in a namespace. Using the system imports the namespace and you can now access the classes in the system namespace. Next, as the first program, we have the class keyword and class name, and then we will enter the main function and print the message hello. Now, we will see how to write comments in C# programming language. Comments can be used to explain and improve the readability of C# code. It can also be used to prevent the execution when experimenting with the different codes. In C#, there are two types of comments. The first one is the single line comment, and single line comments are preceded by 2 forward slashes. C# ignores any text between 2 forward slashes and the end of the line does not execute it. You can see this is a comment as the comment, and this comment is being preceded by 2 forward slashes. This particular statement will be ignored by C#. Followed by single line comment, we have double line or multi-line comments in C#. So the comments that span multiple lines begin with / star and end with * can be considered as multi-line comments. C# will ignore any text between these type of comments. In this example, you can see this is a multi-line comment, and this statement will print hello Simplilearn is a command hidden between / star and */. So this is a multi-line comment. With that, we have finished the multi-line commands in C# programming language. Moving ahead, we will try to install the best IDE for C# programming language, and the tutorial for that is linked in the description box below. Please feel free to check it out. And without further ado, let's get started with the next topic, that is conditional statements in C# programming language. The programmer must specify one or more conditions to be evaluated or tested by the program. A statement or statements to be executed in the form of a condition is determined to be true, or optionally or other statements to be executed if the condition is determined to be false. The types of conditional statements in C# programming language are as follows. In C#, we start with if statement, then we have if-else statement. Following that, we have an if-else-if ladder and a nested if conditional statement, and finally a switch statement. We will go through all of these conditional statements in C# one after the other. We will begin with if condition statement. In C# programming language, an if statement is defined as a programming conditional statement, that is, if true, performs an operation or displays information within the statement block, and the statement for if statement is as follows. If the condition is true, only then a block of code will be executed. The flow diagram of if statement in the conditional statements is as shown below. First, we will begin at the start, and there is a condition. If the condition is true, the following statement will be executed. Next, we have if-else condition statement. In C#, the if-else statement is used to perform the operations based on a specific condition. If the condition is true, the operation specified in the block is executed. Otherwise, the else block is executed. The syntax of if-else statement is as follows. If the condition is true, the block of code is to be executed is true. Otherwise, if the condition is false, the block of code to be executed is false. The flow diagram of if-else statement illustrates as follows. Next, after the if-else statement, we have the if-else-if ladder. In C#, if-else statement is used to perform operations based on specific condition. If the condition is true, the operation specified in the if block are executed, or else the else block will be executed. The following is the syntax for if-else-if statement or if-else-if ladder. If the condition 1 is true, the if block of code will be executed. Otherwise, if condition 1 is false and condition 2 is true, the else if block will be executed. And if both the conditions are false, then the else block will be executed. The flow diagram for if-else-if statements is as follows. The next type of condition statement we will look is the nested if statement. In C# programming language, a nested if statement is defined as a conditional programming statement that includes another if statement inside the previous if statement. The following is the syntax of nested if statement. If condition 1 is true, the first block of code will be executed. If condition 2 is true, the second if of the block will be executed. And if both the conditions are false, then the else block of statements will be executed. The flow diagram for the nested if statement is as follows. Finally, there is switch condition statement. In C# programming language, the switch is defined as programming selection statement that checks for a possible match to provided condition against the available cases. If none of the cases match, the control will run the default statement of the block. The syntax of switch statement is as follows. First, we have an expression after the switch keyword. Then we have the following cases. If a case matches expression, the code will be executed. If case B matches the expression, case B's code will be executed, and so on. If none of the cases match the expression, then the default block code will be executed. Here is a flow diagram of switch conditional statement that shows how it works in detail. So followed by the conditional statements in C#, we have the loops in C#. In C#, the loop control statement performs a looping operation until the given condition is met. When the condition is false, the controls are removed from the loop statements. There are three different types of loops in C# programming language as listed below. The first loop is for loop. Next we have while loop, and lastly we have do while loop. The syntax for for loop is as follows. Three statements in parentheses after the keyword for. Statement 1 is executed once before the code block is executed. Statement 2 specifies the condition under which the code block will be executed. After code block has been executed, statement 3 is executed every time. The flow diagram for the for loop is as shown below. First, we will begin, then we will initialize, and then there is a condition. If the condition is true, we will increment or decrement accordingly. And if the condition is false, we will end the process. Following that, we will learn about the while loop. While loop is a repeat statement or group of statements if a given condition is true. Before executing the loop body, it checks the condition. The syntax for while loop is simple because there is only one condition, which will be run until the condition becomes false. The flow diagram for while loop is shown as below. First, we will start the loop. Then if the condition is true, the statement will be executed until the condition is false. Now we have do while loop at the end. Do while loop is an alternative to while loop. This loop will execute the code block once before checking the condition is true, and then it will loop along with the condition is true. If the condition is false, then the loop will stop. The flow diagram for do while loop is as follows. Following that, we will learn about arrays in C# programming language. A fixed size sequential collection of elements of the same data type are stored in an array. An array stores a collection of data, but it is often more useful to think of an array as a collection of variables of the same type stored in continuous memory locations. Instead of declaring individual variables like array, array1, array2, 3, 4, and 99, you declare one array variable like array and use memory locations array of 0, array of 1 until array of 99 to represent individual variables. An index is used to access specific element in an array. Here we have an array. Array 0 is the first element and array 99 is the last element of the array. Following that, we will look into how to declare an array in C#. In C#, you can declare an array using the following syntax. We start with data type, then we have square brackets where we specify the size of the array, and finally we have the array name. An array example is shown in the screen where data type is integer and the array name is array. Next, we will look into how to initialize array. Declaring an array does not cause the array to be initialized in memory. After the array variable has been initialized, you can assign values to it. The syntax is as follows. Because the array is a reference data type, you must see the new keyword to create an array instance. In the following example, we have an array called numbers with the data type int, which we initialize with the keyword new. We will understand strings in C# after seeing arrays in C#. So the string in C# is a string object with the value text. The text is internally stored as a sequential read-only collection of character objects. Because there is no null terminating character in the end of C# string, it can contain any number of embedded null characters. The syntax of string is given below, where first we have a character string followed by a string's name as A, B, C. An example of string, that is Simplilearn, there are string functions listed below. First we have the clone function, which returns a string reference. Next we have a compare function that compares two specific strings. After that we have a concat function that joins two strings and stores the results in the first string. Following that we have that contains return the value of the specified string. After that we have a copy to which the character from the specified position. The following equals function that determines the two string objects we have the same value. Lastly, we have a trim function that trims the string. Following these C# basics, we will learn about C# methods or functions in this tutorial. A method is a collection of statements that work together to complete a task. Every C#, the program contains at least one class with the main method. To use methods in C#, we must perform first to define the method and secondly to call the method. First, we will define the methods. When you define a method, you are essentially declaring the elements that make up its structure. The syntax for defining a method is as follows. First, we have an access specifier, then we have a return type, then we have a method name, lastly we have a parameter list, and finally we have the block of code. In the following example, we have a specific public access specifier and returns types of int. We have a method with name findMinimum, which finds out minimum number between the variables a and b. Following that, we will learn how to call a method. You can call a method using the name of the method. The following examples exemplifies it. We have used the same example in defining the method. So in the main function, we have called the findMin function, which is assigned to the result variable and prints minimum value. Following that, we will understand the collections in C#. Collection classes are specialized data storage and retrieval classes. Stacks, queues, lists, and hash tables are all supported by these classes. The interfaces of most collection classes are the same. Collection classes serve various functions such as dynamically allocating memory to elements and accessing a list of items via an index, among others. These classes construct collections of objects which serve as foundation for all the data types in C#. The following are some C# collection classes. The system.collection namespaces. Most used classes are listed below. To learn more about them, the link is in the description box below. First, we have ArrayList classes. It represents an ordered collection of objects that can be individually indexed. The next class is hashtable. It makes use of key to gain access to the elements in the collection. Following that, we have sorted list. To access the items in a list, it employs both a key and an index. After that, we have a stack class. It represents a collection of objects arranged in a last in first out order. Next, we have queue classes. It represents a collection of objects arranged in a first in first out order. Last but not the least, bit array. It represents a binary representation array with values 1 and 0. After we understand collections in C#, we will see enums in C#. An enum is a type of class representing a collection of constraints, variables that cannot be changed or read. Use the enum keyword rather than class or interface to create an enum and separate the enum items with a comma. In the following example, the name of enum is direction and all 4 directions, which are east, west, north, and south, are separated by comma. We will now look into the object-oriented programming in C#. OOP is an abbreviation for object-oriented programming. Writing procedures or methods that perform operations on data is what procedural programming is all about. In contrast, an object-oriented programming is all about creating objects that contain both data and methods. Object-oriented programming has several advantages over procedural programming, including the following. Object-oriented programming is faster and easier to implement. Object-oriented programming gives the programs a clear structure. Object-oriented programming aids in keeping C# code dry, do not repeat yourself, and makes it easier to maintain, modify, and debug. Object-oriented programming allows for the creation of fully reusable applications with less code and shorter development time. After learning about OOPs, we will learn about the object-oriented programming paradigms in C# programming language. First, we must comprehend classes and objects. In C#, everything is associated with classes and objects and their attributes and methods. A car, for example, is an object in real life. The car has attributes like size, color, as well as methods like start and stop. The class functions similarly to an object function is a blueprint for creating objects. The following is an example. An object is a car and its attributes are its size and color, and starting and stopping are its methods. Following that, we will go through the 4 fundamental object-oriented programming concepts in OOPs in C#. The first concept of OOPs is abstraction. Followed by that, we have encapsulation, inheritance, and finally, we have polymorphism. We will learn all these 4 concepts in depth. First, C# abstraction. Abstraction processes hiding of internal details and displaying only the main functionality. Next, we have encapsulation. Encapsulation in C# is the process of combining data members and member functions into a single unit. After that, we have C# inheritance. It is a process by which one object automatically inherits all the properties and behaviors of its parent object. And lastly, polymorphism. It is defined as one name, many forms. Polymorphism allows a class to have multiple implementations with same name. Next, we have access modifiers or access specifiers in C#. In C#, access modifiers specify the scope of accessibility of a class member or a type of class itself. The first access specifier is public, indicating that the code is accessible to all classes. The following access specifier is private, meaning the code can be only accessed within the same class. Following that, the protected access specifier. The code is accessible within the same class or a class inherited from that class. Finally, there is an internal access specifier, which means that the code is only accessible within its assembly and cannot be accessed from another assembly. Following that, we will learn about the file operations in C#. The file mode enumerator defines various file opening methods. The following members of file mode enumerations are described. First, there is append function. Text is appended to an end of an already existing file. The following functions is the copy function which duplicates the file. The third function is the creation function, which is used to create or replace a file. Following that, we have the delete function which deletes a file. The fifth function is the exists function which determines whether or not a file exists. Following that, we have read all text function. This function reads a file contents. After that, we have replace function. It replaces one file's contents with contents of another. Finally, write all text creates a file and writes its contents into it. So following the file handling in C#, we have the exception handling in C#. Exception handling is a phrase that deals with handling errors and exceptions that occur during runtime due to coding errors or invalid user input. In C# programming language, we use 4 keywords in exception handling. We'll start with try exception handling. The try statement lets you define a section of code that will be checked for errors as it runs. The catch statement is used for exception handling if an error occurs in the try block. It allows you to define a block of code that will be executed. Following that, we have finally exception handling. The final statement allows you to run code after the try statement regardless of the outcome of catch. Finally, there is throw exception handling. You can define your error using the throw statement. Finally, in this video, we will learn about the new features of C# programming language. So some of the important new features of C# programming language includes the following. Interface methods by default, types of nullable, references, enhancements to pattern matching, asynchronous streams, making use of declarations, interpolated verbatim string enhancement, assignment of null coalescing, local static functions, indices and their ranges, types of unmanaged construction. In nested expressions, use the read-only member stackable. Now with that, we have reached to the end of this video. If you have any questions about any of the topics covered in this video, then please feel free to let us know in the comment section below, and our team of experts will be happy to resolve all your queries. Until next time, thank you, stay safe and keep learning.
Hi there, if you like this video, subscribe to the Simplilearn YouTube channel and click here to watch similar videos. To nerd up and get certified, click here.